Most of us that watch network TV haven't gone even a few minutes without seeing an ad from Pacific Resource Partnership or Imua Rail. And what they're talking about is promoting rail and attacking former Governor Cayetano. Today, we have somebody who knows a lot about Governor Cayetano. He's investigated him, and he's also known him personally as a friend. So he can talk to us about his campaign contributions and all the things that Governor Cayetano's being accused of wrongdoing. And of course, we've had Governor Cayetano on the show too. But I want to welcome Bob Watada.
Thank you very much.
You are a famous person in Hawaii, especially about 10 years ago when we had you as the State Campaign Spending Director, Executive Director. And the Campaign Spending Commission is basically, we can get more into it, but we're overseeing politicians and their campaign contributions to make sure they were legal.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So while you were in office, maybe you were in there about, what, 10 years?
10 years. I was executive director.
And there's a funny story about who you took over from, but we can get back into that in a little bit later. Yeah, right. But tell us why are you in Hawaii right now?
Well, I came back to play tennis.
You came to play tennis, but while you're here playing tennis, what did you have to share with the media while you're here?
Well, what I've seen are ads by Pacific Resources Partnerships, and one of the ads I've seen is, and I've seen some written materials on this, about how Governor Cayetano is cheating and so forth and so on. And I just want to set the record straight on that. So,
it's cheating on his campaign spending reports or on his donations?
Well, what they say is illegally using campaign contributions. And I wanted to point out that there was nothing illegal that he did. The way the campaign is set up is that money is put into a dedicated account, and the candidate usually doesn't know who is giving money to that account. It could be Joe Smith and Jack Smith. It could be the same person, but they really don't know that. It was only after the Campaign Spending Commission, some years later, we were able to develop a computer program. I think you know Tony Baldomero developed this program, which allowed us to begin to sort campaign contributions. We put it all on a disk, and we started sorting, and we began seeing some of these relationships, and that's when we began recognizing that there are some companies that were giving large amounts of money coming from the same source under different names to the candidate. And this is probably the first opening to the whole system. In fact, it was Frank Fosse's campaign that we saw some of these things. And then we moved into many other campaigns, the Cayetano campaign, we moved into the Jeremy Harris campaign, and so forth. And then going back to the fact that...
Because you just methodically wanted to look at, was this happening in other races because it was happening in Frank Fosse's races? You'd seen these patterns before, but you wanted to kind of look at, is that what you're saying?
Right.
Yeah.
And so we were looking at it. That's when we began to recognize that there were large amounts of contributions given by donors that were over the limit.
So what the system is called is pay to play, which means that if you're a company, you feel that you're told that by some other companies maybe that are organizing this whole thing, that you should give a certain amount of contributions to a candidate in order to get contracts later on.
Correct.
And so the question was, a lot of candidates did get these donations that were bundled, right? You called it bundling,
right.
where a lot of different, you're saying different, it's coming from all different, the same address but different names, money hidden under different names. That's false name contributions, it's called, right? Right,
false name contributions, names in, the law calls the false name contributions are names given in the name of other persons. The law is clear, it says contributions made have to be your own money. Okay, so what we have is, we have this, by this time we recognize it's a very large system, but what Campaign Spending Commission did is we could only do what the law allows us, and that is to legally go after the donor, because they're the ones that made the illegal contributions. And in terms of the contributions that were received by the candidate, they don't know. And so once they've spent the money legitimately on campaign purposes, then it's gone. And this is the case of Cayetano. He had spent most of his money on his campaign, and whatever is left, the law says, well, if there are illegal contributions, what the law says is it must escheat to the campaign spending fund, which we did. We sought to get monies, and the Cayetano campaign escheated, I forget, something like $6,000 to $7,000 back to the Campaign Spending Commission at the end when they closed up. But we would not have closed up if he had any liabilities or anything that was not proper. And if he did do something illegal, we would have referred him to the prosecutor. But there was nothing there that we could say that he did anything illegal. So today, 10 years later, to say something he did illegal, it's an affront to me and the Campaign Spending Commission, because we did our due diligence in making certain that the candidate, before they closed up, had no outstanding liabilities.
Yeah,
and
now these commercials that we're seeing on TV from Pacific Resource Partnership, which is a membership organization for contractors that are benefiting from the rail project. And of course, Governor Cayetano doesn't want the rail project. He's the only mayoral candidate running that will cancel the rail project if he's elected. So there's a lot of money being poured into stopping him from getting elected. And he's ahead in the polls. So there's more fear that he'll get elected. And so the Pacific Resource Partnership commercials you're referring to are basically saying that Governor Cayetano accepted illegal contributions and then found a loophole to keep the money and never returned it. And so basically, just so people can understand, be real clear, you're saying that's an affront to you and to the Campaign Spending Commission. That
is, because there was no loophole. He followed the law, and we made certain that he followed the law, and everybody else followed the law. If there's any loophole, Pacific Resources Partnership is using the loophole of not reporting who is giving money to them, because the whole Campaign Spending Commission law is premised on disclosure of who gives you money and how much and how the money is used to make sure it's used legally.
So Pacific Resource Partnership, you're saying, it's funny because they're accusing Governor Cayetano of breaking the law or using a loophole to get around returning campaign contributions, but you're saying actually they're really using a loophole to keep their donations secret.
If that's a loophole, right.
Right. And so we don't know where the money is coming from right now from Pacific Resource Partnership that they're using to attack Governor Cayetano. But Della Al-Baladi, who is a representative, was in a forum with you today, a little press conference with Governor Cayetano as well, and she said that she challenged them to make their list public of donors.
Right. They should report this week, like all the candidates, full disclosure, full transparency. Where did they get their money from? And it'll be clear that they're getting their money from the people who are opponents. I shouldn't say opponents of Cayetano, because they want the rail system. They plan or they hope to gain a lot of money from the rail system.
Now, you know Governor Cayetano for quite a while, so before we move into some of the other campaign spending historical investigations, which I think we should document, have people know about, but what do you personally think of Governor Cayetano? You've known him for how many years?
I've known him for years and years and years. When he was in the House, we had a number of discussions on labor issues. When he was in the Senate, same thing. When he was Lieutenant Governor, we worked with him on the A+ program. When he was on the governor, we worked on different issues. He's always had all the marbles on the table as far as public things in the public interest is concerned. And so to suggest that he's lying cuts wrong with me, because he's not a kind of person. He doesn't know how to lie. He doesn't know how to cheat or be deceitful. He just comes right out and says, hey, this is the way I see it. And a lot of people don't like him for that, but that's the way he sees it. And he's a man of character. And so, to suggest he's lying, he's not lying about this rail project costing billions of dollars. That's going to end up in the taxpayer's lap.
He ends up getting, he definitely tells you what he thinks.
Right.
And he's very straightforward. and he'll just punch you in the nose without you knowing what he's about to punch you in the nose. But he'll tell you what he thinks is true. That's very true.
He may not like it.
Right, you may not like it, but that's the way he is. It's very straightforward.
When he was the governor, the retirement issue, or a number of issues that he tackled were not popular with the unions, and it wasn't popular with a lot of people, but he said, hey, we cannot continue to give retirement pay at the rate we're doing it because it's going to run out of money, and we're not going to be able to sustain it.
Well, one of the things that he mentioned today was that with Kurt Caldwell, some of the unions are endorsing Kurt Caldwell for mayor because Governor Cayetano did try to do civil service reform, actually did accomplish civil service reform. That was undone, of course, when he left. But so he has an interesting take on that in terms of endorsements and why Kurt Caldwell's been endorsed over him.
Well, yeah, it's because the labor unions are very short-sighted. They're only looking at today and making certain that they get a big part of the apple pie. But take a look at some of the other states and the difficulties. Oregon, they're laying off teachers all over the place because they don't have the money, and that's going to happen to Hawaii.
It's going to happen soon enough with all of our liabilities that we write about quite a bit. Yeah.
And, I think I mentioned the sewer project. If we had properly funded the sewer system and maintenance and everything, we wouldn't have the huge sewer surcharge that we do today.
I know that's one of the issues that Governor Cayetano brought up when he was on the show, was the reason he wants to stop the rail project, besides the fact that he thinks it's poor technology and it's ugly and noisy and it hurts the environment. He also said that we really need to spend the money not on rail, not $5 billion on rail. We need to spend it on infrastructure repairs. And he talks about sewers and roads and water mains, and how we actually need to spend about, I guess it's about $12 billion to fix all of our infrastructure. So that's what he said he wants to focus on.
I just drove up Waialae Avenue, and I couldn't believe all the potholes in it.
I know. And, the roads are really deteriorating, and the city's falling apart, no doubt about it.
The city's falling apart, and that's where the money should be spent, rather than having everybody pay more money for a rail tax, which they will. I can guarantee you 20 years from now, everybody will be paying $150 every single month for rail that they don't use.
So let's talk a little bit about, so for people that might not have been paying attention when you were back here in the Campaign Spending Commission, let's get it on record about what happened. You were from, was it 1995 to 2005, or what were the years? When did you retire?
From 1996 to 2006.
2006, okay.
Right.
And one of the reasons you became so famous or notorious, depending on who you asked, was because you really tackled powerful politicians. And I was writing about that all those years, so I remember it well. But some of them were, for example, Jeremy Harris. He was destined to be governor, and he was raising money like crazy, very successfully, and raised about $3 million. But maybe you can tell people, after your investigation, what did you find out about that $3 million?
Well, Jeremy Harris was not the most honest person. We're talking about raiding the sewer fund in order to look better. He used the sewer money for some of his pet projects.
Which is why we're in the what we're in today.
Yeah,
partly.
we're in the mess we're in today as far as sewers is concerned. He was not a person that had foresight. He was not a person that had any convictions about what was best for the city. He was only concerned about himself. And so when we started investigating, we found out that there was just a lot of corruption going on in his administration, stealing things from the city. If you remember the granite rocks.
Right. Who was it that's, I can't remember now.
Ben Lee.
Ben Lee had taken rocks from Chinatown that were historic rocks.
Right.
And transported them to his home to use in his yard.
Right.
And I know we actually followed him there and did a little video of the rocks that he was laying out in his yard that were supposed to be replaced in Chinatown.
Right.
I mean, very old historic rocks, right?
Historic rocks.
Yes.
The granite rocks that came from the quarry and the University of Hawaii quarry. And that's only the tip of the iceberg. There were just a lot of things that we were not able to follow up on simply because some of the money went out of the country.
There was all kinds of things like him starting his own nonprofit, I think it was.
Started his own nonprofit organization.
And people donating to that
supposedly
so he could use
for
it.
the environment.
Right.
And then when he, well, we started investigating that particular, whether or not that was being used for campaign contributions or not. And they moved that organization to Colorado.
So you couldn't have any investigation into it.
Yeah, so we couldn't get to it.
And there was some tie to Costa Rica.
Well, of course, this is all hearsay information, but we were looking into some credible information that he had received quite a bit of money from some of the developers, and that money was then taken to Costa Rica to buy land for him. And we know today that he does have land in Costa Rica.
So it's never, yeah, so there's quite a bit to investigate with him. I remember this, there was a funny story with me and Jeremy Harris, because when he was mayor, I remember I was at a small business event, and he was going on and on and on about how he was helping small businesses and, you know, how he was the champion of small businesses. So I raised my hand at the end, and he wasn't going to take questions, and everybody said, let her ask her question. So I said, Mr. Mayor, if you're really helping small businesses, why do they feel like they have to donate to your campaign in order to get a zoning or a permit or a contract from the city? And he just flew to the back of the room and stood over me and started yelling at me like this, and I was sitting like this, and he's really tall, and he's yelling down at me saying, I challenge you to prove that. And that was before any of your investigation was started. And you know, so really backed up that, because I stood up and I said, I will. I will prove that. And you did. You're the one that proved it.
There were many people who
got involved with proving it.
Especially in Chinatown, were told, okay, if you want to start a business, you're going to have to make a contribution.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was well known. Let's put it that way. Well known in the business community that if you wanted a zoning, a permit, or a contract from the city, that you should make a contribution to Jeremy Harris's either mayoral or gubernatorial campaign.
Right, right.
So of this $3 million that he raised by putting pressure on businesses and using his different companies to help orchestrate that were kind of raising money for him, he raised that $3 million, and wasn't it about half of that money was illegal contributions that you eventually found out?
At least half.
Yeah.
Because clearly the largest amount of illegal contributions of all the candidates went to Jeremy Harris.
And so you started looking into him criminally. He was the only candidate, right, that you looked into criminally?
Right, we did.
And there was a lot of retaliation against you.
There was a lot of retaliation, but we were getting close to, you know, some of the issues, and I think this is the key reason why he dropped out of the governor's race.
Right. He thought he was going to be governor.
He thought he was going to be governor. As you recall, he had started raising money for governor's race, and in May of that year, he suddenly dropped out of the race for the governor.
And it was going to be him versus Linda Lingle, and then Mazie Hirono was thinking about running for mayor. Remember that?
Right.
And then when he dropped out, then Mazie ran for governor as well against what became Governor Lingle.
Right, right.
So in terms of your own experience with you know, how you started kind of tracking these, you said that you started to use software that could track it, but give an example what you'd find. Like, you know, I remember one example was a family who had two elderly parents living in public housing, but somehow they were giving $6,000 each.
That was just one of many. I mean,
yeah.
the companies used every different way of giving illegal contributions. And as you recall, there was one contribution, when we investigated, we found out it was a 12-year-old girl. 12-year-old
girl, right, giving $6,000 or whatever.
$6,000.
Right.
And, you know, it became a great embarrassment to her, but that was it. And I remember one of the persons gave a contribution, and we looked at the obituary, and they had died, you know, like the day after they gave the contribution. $6,000 contribution. So there was.
So you had dead people and children giving
right.
Contributions, huh?
We had all sorts of people, all sorts of funny contributions. that the investigation revealed.
And basically that was the first time in Hawaii that's probably ever been done. And it took you 3 years to go through, not just you, but you had a team of people.
Yeah.
A small team.
Basically, it was a result of Tony developing the computer system to allow us to sort. And so if we got a number of people from the same address, that, of course, was a clue. And that's when we hired Hilton Louie to go actually talk to these people and, if necessary, subpoena bank accounts and so forth and so on.
And Hilton Louie, just for people who don't know, he's an ex-FBI agent.
Right.
Yeah, and so he has a lot of experience in investigations.
That's
credible
why
background.
That's his background in doing investigations, and so this is why we hired him for a short duration, just to get information on some of these companies.
Right.
And but there were Daniel Quijano, and he had taken.
He was the House Speaker.
He was the House Speaker, taken $30,000 from his campaign and put it into annuities for himself.
Now, what else? There was a lot of other people too that you investigated that had. Was Milton Holt?
Milton Holt.
He was a state senator, deemed to be whatever he wanted to be because he was. Bishop of State was behind him, and
right.
And what happened with him?
Monies were going to drugs, and so and because it was drugs, the FBI stepped in. And FBI investigated him and found out that was the case, that he was involved in the drug trade as well.
Right. And then there was the representative that ended up in this, who was blind and ended up in a strip joint and said he didn't know he was in a strip joint. Who was that again?
That was
Tom.
Tom.
Right. And
Terrence Tom.
Yep, Terrence Tom. And didn't he have a problem with campaign spending as well, or?
Well, you recall that Bishop of State was paying him $48,000 a year for doing nothing. Except be over at the legislature and pass their bills.
Right.
And of course, he didn't like me at all because I stepped in and said, "Hey, wait a minute, you can't do that."
There were just so many stories, so many legislators that were getting into trouble. Reen Moncho, talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, she was using her money to go to Panama and different places, and then claiming that they were used for campaign purposes. Now, I don't know what constituents she has over there. She also took
She ended up going to jail.
She ended up going to jail. There were 12 people that went to jail.
12 people under your investigations? Wow, that's quite a few.
Yeah,
do you remember who some of the other ones were?
There was Milton Holt. There
Milton Holt went to jail.
There was
Daniel Quijano.
Rimancho. There was Ige. There was.
Oh, that's right. It was Marshall Ige, right? And what happened
Ige.
with Marshall Ige? He was taking illegal contributions, I think.
Yeah, he was involved with Bishop of State in doing the bidding for Bishop of State and getting contributions from Bishop of State. And we found out through their records that they were giving him contributions. That's when Rick Dasog investigated the Bishop of State and shared that information with us. There was one Republican. I can't remember at the end. At the end, there was one Republican.
That went to jail?
Yeah, that went to jail.
Can't remember. We'll have to get out our history books. We'll have to write a history book. So you have to write all this down so we don't forget.
Of the contractors, there was one person. There was a treasurer for a company that violated.
Yeah, let's talk about the companies. Okay, so you uncovered about 100 contractors and architects and engineers that had given illegal contributions. They were organized by some bigger companies that told them, you have to give this much, and then it was all directed to a certain candidate. And that's that's what you basically uncovered, this whole network.
Right.
Of how
the system
works, and that was the whole pay-to-play thing. But really, you only just really probably scratched the surface, because
probably just scratched the
3
surface.
years, and now you've been gone for this, since 2006. And honestly, I haven't heard a word from the Campaign Spending Commission in terms of investigations since that. So I don't know how much has been.
I think to one extent, what we did is, of course, we did a lot to try to change the law to make it, more clear as to what you can or cannot do. That's one of the things that we did, and we made candidates aware that this is what you can do, to the point that even Governor Cayetano today said that whenever he makes solicitation letters, he tells them what the law is, so that the candidates, I mean, the donors are clear as what they can or cannot give. You know, they can't say, well, I didn't know, I would just ask, so I gave, which some of the people did at that time. But you have this culture, which I think we changed. I think we changed the culture to some extent. From what I hear from different candidates and so forth today, House members and so forth, Dilla Al-Baladi, yeah, she says, and she makes sure that she diligently follows the law.
Well, and also it helps with electronic filing, because as was said, it's easier to track odd occurrences and
it's all online
and to
right
match,
now.
right? So you can
something before I came in, nobody ever saw the light of day of campaign contributions, and we felt that it ought to be out there in the public where everybody could see it, and that's one of the things that Tony Baldomero did. And
Tony's still there today to help ensure.
He's there today, and he got another award from DAGS, I understand, for some of the work he's done to get contributions out there so that people could see them, and expenditures. Make it very transparent. That was the whole purpose, is make it transparent. And if it's transparent, people are going to be very careful about donors are going to be very careful, and the candidates are going to be very careful how they spend their money. That was one of the big abuses at the time. Candidates who would spend their money taking the family out to Sunday dinner, and then, in fact, we had one candidate that every single day went out and bought meals.
Rod Tam. Rod Tam. He got into trouble while you were living in Oregon. Got into quite a bit of trouble for that. Yeah, but he only went to jail for 1 day. So I don't know how serious the government took it, but he did get into trouble, and of course he's not in office anymore. But he was a state senator and a council member, as well. So, gosh, there's so many stories. But we only have about 30 seconds left in the show. But bottom line is, you're here and you're basically saying that Governor Cayetano, your message today was Governor Cayetano didn't do anything wrong, didn't break the law. And
that's correct.
And he's an honest man, and you're countering what PRP is saying, Pacific Resource Partnership.
Very clearly, that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think hopefully your message gets out to the public. So your side of the story and Dilla Al-Baladi's side, she was a commissioner, now a representative, can get out. So we appreciate you taking the time to spend so much time with us and document some of the interesting history about Hawaii and some of the current history that's in the making.
Glad to share that information with you, Malia.
Thank you, Bob, so much. We missed you in Hawaii. We wish you were back.
I'm enjoying Oregon.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, this has been News Behind the News. Thank you for joining us today. Aloha.